Today is September 14th, the very first day of the new ban list that had a bunch of big and smaller changes that help out a lot of strategies. And in today's video, I want to tell you about 5 decks that I feel are being really underestimated right now. These are sort of underdog picks that I maybe didn't see as many comments about, but I feel like all 5 of these decks have potential as an underdog strategy, as a more rogue level deck, but all of these do actually have ways to beat the meta, and I think people are really not thinking about them as much as they probably should be. All of these decks have fans online, and I think people have talked about them a little bit, but not nearly as much as the other decks that people were really discussing when the ban list first dropped. Oh, and make sure if you guys want to buy any cards that I mention in today's video, or just any cards or card supplies in general, please use my link in the description below to tcgplayer.com. I know a lot of you guys are buying cards because of the ban list, and I would really appreciate it if you guys clicked that link in the description below. Anyway, without further ado, let's talk about 5 underrated decks right now. First up, we have Salamangreats, and no, we did not get back any copies of Gazelle or Circle, and no, Mirage Stalio is not unbanned, but still, I think that Salamangreats are looking really good in the upcoming format, and yet I've barely seen any comments about them, and I think that's a real shame because Salamangreats are really well positioned right now for a few key reasons. First off, while they didn't get any cards back on the ban list, they also didn't take any direct hits, and some might say that Called by the Grave going to 1 copy per deck is a slight buff to Salamangreats. Nothing hurt more than getting some of your powerful graveyard effects or hand traps hit by Called by the Grave, and now that card won't be around as much as it has been in the past. More importantly though, Salamangreats have an excellent grind game, and I think in a format where Eldritch is one of the best decks, I think we're going to see more people use decks that are better in the long term. Sure, we're still going to see big combo decks make a huge board on turn 1, but for all the other players out there playing different types of decks besides combo, you really want a deck that can keep applying pressure turn after turn after turn, and Salamangreats are really good at doing that. They always have been. Additionally, Salamangreats have always been really good against back row decks. You have Foxy, you have Heatleo, which you can summon multiple times in the same turn, you have tons of recursion in your graveyard that you can just keep throwing monsters at your opponent's trap cards. I think that Salamangreats are one of the best decks in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Against back row strategy. They just have so many ways to get rid of back row. It makes them really strong in formats where a lot of people are playing slower controlling strategies. Additionally, they always have OTK potential, especially now with access code Talker, so they can close out games pretty much whenever they want to. They might not be as exciting or new as other decks in the format right now. They didn't really get any cards back on the ban list, but still, I think this deck is very underrated for the current format. I know that people have mentioned Harpies already, but I don't think there's a lot of serious discussion around this deck, so I'm gonna put them in today's video. I think that Harpies did gain quite a lot, not only from Duster going back to 1, that certainly does help, especially because they have a way to search it pretty consistently, but also I think just taking the other decks down a few power levels has really helped out Harpies quite a lot. In a format, kind of like I just mentioned with Salamangreats, where a lot of people are playing back row decks, having a deck that has a field spell that breaks through a lot of back row, and having a deck that can search a Harpies Feather Duster pretty much whenever you want it, does seem pretty appealing right now. Beyond that, the regular Harpy cards that you're used to seeing in Harpy Lady decks have a lot of really good effects, especially in terms of card advantage. There's lots of searching, there's lots of cycling, there's lots of bouncing. These cards are not bad. They've always just been a little bit underpowered for the current format. That being said, because of how many back row decks I expect to see with the new ban list, especially in the first couple of weeks, I think Harpy Ladies actually do have the potential to get some wins. Maybe not necessarily in big tournaments, but definitely at locals and online play, this deck is looking really good. Harpy Ladies also have access to the extremely powerful Harpy's Feather Storm. This card has always been really great, but it's been stuck in a deck that obviously has not seen a lot of competitive play. But I think right now this card and the rest of the Harpy Lady deck could be viable in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Next up, and I know I made fun of this deck a little bit, but I think that Domain Monarch specifically could be a viable strategy in the upcoming weeks. The reason is that while I feel that Monarchs as a whole have sort of been power crept out of Yu-Gi-Oh!, especially now that we have so many more hand traps that we didn't have back in 2016, such as Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, which just completely stops the entire deck, I think that Domain specifically is still a very powerful card, especially in combination with the other Monarch support cards. I'm not entirely sure if an extra deck variant of Monarchs could work in 2020. I mean, I know those decks worked a lot back in 2016, but nowadays I feel like you really do just have to only focus on Domain. I mean, I could be wrong here. Maybe extra deck Monarchs are better than I'm giving them credit for, but at least in my mind, Domain Monarch does seem like the way to play the deck, and I think people are going to look to try that deck out. It was a very popular deck back in the day, especially with budget players, and that really hasn't changed. I've watched a few deck profiles of Domain Monarchs on YouTube, like from the last couple of days, and it's funny looking at them because almost all of the cards, like more than 30 of them, are the exact same that they were 4 years ago. Is that good? Is that bad? I mean, that's up for you guys to decide, but still, I think that the core Monarch support cards from the structure deck specifically are still pretty good, and Domain is a very good floodgate to base an entire deck around. Next up, we have Chaos Lightsworn, a deck that I've experimented with a little bit in the past, especially when Toon Chaos was first released. I really did want to try to play Chaos Space and the Chaos Creator and all those new Chaos cards in one deck, and I think a lot of people would like to see a deck like this in competition. It's a very non-linear strategy. Your hands are going to be wildly different every single time. There's so many options, there's so many plays, there's so many crazy things that can happen while you're milling like half your deck. I think that this deck, especially with the new Synchro Monster that was just released in Rise of the Duelist, could actually be a competitively viable strategy. What I really enjoy about Chaos Lightsworns is how flexible they are, not only when you're actually playing the deck and you have a lot of plays at your disposal, but also in deck building. You can pretty much play whatever engine or archetype you want to in Chaos Lightsworn as long as it is either light or dark, or maybe even light and dark. That could be pretty cool as well. And finally, don't hate me for this, but I think that Numeron Guru is actually a pretty good control deck in the upcoming format. The Numeron engine is really good with the Guru cards. You want to set cards, you don't really care about summoning cards as much. You're also already playing a field spell, Hidden City, so you're already playing Terraforming, so the Terraforming has extra value. And I really feel out of all of the other back row decks out there that this one in particular really does have the most amount of options to deal with cards like Lightning Storm or Duster. You have Fiendus, you have Solemn Judgment, you have the Numeron engine. There are so many different cards that can deal with things that want to destroy your back row. And as annoying as it can be, this strategy can play quite a lot of really strong floodgates. Things like Goes in Match, there can be only one. Things like Summon Limit, you can just floodgate pretty much every single combo deck, and then against the slower strategies, you can gain a ton of advantage over every single turn. I really do think that Numeron Guru is a very good deck in the upcoming format, and yet a lot of people just aren't even talking about it. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Let me know in the comment section below how you feel these 5 decks might do in the upcoming format, and also let me know which decks you would have included in today's video. I'll see you guys later though. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.